Last week, I think Brother Warren had asked a question. I think it was Brother Warren concerning the mark, the name, and the number. And I know we have discussed it.
Yes.
a cou-
Yes, that was my,
Okay, Brother Warren. And I know we have
yes.
discussed it a couple of times, but I'd still like to go back over it since he asked, and just it won't take long. So it will just maybe fill in the remaining space, and then we can close for the evening. But let's actually look at what the Bible says as we discuss this subject. All right, it's Revelation 13, and it's the last few verses. So we have pretty much exhausted the beast and the image and the mark, pretty much, right? If there are any questions, we can deal with it. But at the same time, we've covered most of what I wanted to cover. So probably next week we will begin a different line of study, but also in the prophecies. So it says that in verse 17, well, starting from verse 16, I should start from verse 15. It says that the second beast, that is a two-horned beast, had power to give life unto the image of the beast. So what we understand is that the image of the beast is a system set up within America, because America is a two-horned beast. And America establishes a system similar to the first beast. And that's why it is called the image of the beast. So it's a system designed in the same manner as the first system. It does similar work, and it is set up in a similar. It doesn't have 7 heads and 10 horns, but the same principles and ideas that existed in this first beast are adopted. So the image of the beast is a system of government. This is my understanding. It's a system of government. The image of the beast is not a different kingdom. It's a system of government, a system of organization. So America has adopted a system of government that is similar to what persecuted the saints under the first beast. And it's not just a token system. That is why most of us are very interested in what is happening in America at this moment, because whatever is happening, I know people say there's an agenda behind it and all the rest of it, but whatever is happening, the bottom line is it is giving the government the freedom and the motivation to set up a system of total control. The what we call anarchy and the protests and the demonstrations and the knocking down buildings and statues, and some of them took over a part of Seattle. All of this is pushing to the place where the government is going to be justified, or people are going to justify the government in setting up an organization that has absolute control over people. And that is just a step in taking control of your conscience as well. So it's very interesting, because this is what the Bible says will happen. And it won't be just a token a token system, like in Jamaica, they make all kinds of rules. And I'm always amused and sometimes irritated, because they make laws that they cannot hope the police. They make rules that just don't make any sense. They tell you, let me do something that irritates me. They're making it illegal to urinate on the roadside. In America, every corner you go and every gas station, they have a urinal, right? In Jamaica, you can go into the town and you can't find a place. You don't find a public place. You can't go into a store and ask to use their toilet. It's private for them and their staff. It's not allowed, right? So you make a law and you don't have any provision to make that law effective. And it just irritates me, because anything they don't like, they make a law. And not only can't they police and they can't enforce the law, it just becomes a waste of a law, and it also is something that is not practical. So anyway, but what the Bible says here is that this is not the kind of law that the image of the beast will be. It will speak, it will have authority, and it will cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. In other words, it's a system that is going to work. It's going to be effective. It will have the power to do it, and it will be done. And he causes all, small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, everybody, black and white, two, This law is not color prejudiced, and it's not racially prejudiced, and it's not class prejudiced. And it causes them to receive a mark. So we mostly focus on the mark because it says they receive a mark in the right hand or in their forehead. But it kind of mentions, kind of like in passing, as a second thought, that nobody can buy or sell except he that had the mark. But it doesn't stop there. It says also the name of the beast or the number of his name. So what it suggests is that even though the mark is highlighted, the mark is going to be the primary thing. The mark is going to be the thing that is highlighted and pushed. But you might escape also by having another qualification. You have the name of the beast or you have the number of his name. So these three things are significant. It mentions mark, and it mentions name, and it mentions number. So it's the way that people have approached this that is interesting. In studying the book of Revelation especially, it's important that we try to get some kind of consistency in how we relate to the thing. For example, you can't say the number is literal, but the mark is figurative, and the name is figurative. That's not consistency. You can't say the number is figurative, but the name is literal, and the number is literal. So you have to kind of find a standard way of approaching all three things to be consistent. That's what I'm saying. And so we have had some interesting interpretations. I know that Seventh-day Adventists say that this number of the beast is obtained by calculating a supposed title of the Pope. And I say supposed because there's a lot of debate about whether this title was ever used by the Pope. I mean, the title is very specific. It is Vicar of the Son of God. If you say Vicar of Christ, it will not work. If you say Vicar of Jesus, it will not work. If you say the Pope, it will not work. It has to be Vicar of the Son of God. It's stated specifically this way because that is how you get it in Latin to read Vicarius Filii Dei. And with that now you can go and you can calculate that you put numbers for the Roman numerals and you end up with 666. So that is how Adventists generally interpret that number of the beast. His number is 603 square and 6. Now, notice something. We are told that people will receive the mark. The mark is what is emphasized. But then we are given the number. The number is emphasized in the last verse. It says, here is wisdom. The one who understanding should count the number of the beast, for it is a number of a man. And it tells you the number is 603 square and 6. So the number is kind of significant as a kind of identification of this beast. I think the number here serves to identify who the beast is because it tells you it's the number of a man and his number is this. So it kind of gives you an idea where to look at for this beast, right? Anyway, if you have the number or the name or the mark, you're kind of safe when the mark comes around, when the crisis comes around. So one of the things that I learned is that, and I recommend this to anybody, when you are interpreting the book of Revelation, go to the Old Testament and look for these numbers and images and pictures and symbols. Why? Because it is very, very clear. If you're not blind, you know that Revelation is written in the language of the Old Testament. If you didn't know better, you would say Revelation is an Old Testament book. Almost everything in Revelation is from the Old Testament. It mentions places and names and things that are tied to the Old Testament. The river Euphrates, the kingdom of Babylon, Sodom, Egypt. They're all references to things from the Old Testament. And so you have the sanctuary, you have the censer, you have the altar, you have the covenant. It's all in the book of Revelation. And so you can tell that God is saying, when you are studying Revelation, go to the Old Testament and look at these symbols and try to find out how can you adjust or how can you adapt these things to the New Testament understanding or to the prophetic understanding. So this is an approach I think people don't take all the time. This morning I was having a little discussion with my brother about the my brother holds to traditional Adventist beliefs, and so he believes that he doesn't accept the idea I've tried to share, that the beast has to do more with Europe and that side of the world. He is focused on the Pope. And so, the Adventist Church says that blasphemy is if a man claims to be God and if a man has the power to forgive sins. And they say this because Jesus was accused of blasphemy by the Jews because he claimed to have the power to forgive sins and he claimed to be the Son of God. So they accuse him of blasphemy. And so that's where Adventists say this is blasphemy. But I pointed my brother to the Old Testament because in the Old Testament, blasphemy is more seen as when you challenge God, when you claim to be able to defy God and stand against God and and that God cannot obstruct your purposes. This is what the Old Testament sees as blasphemy. There's two different ideas, so it depends on where you go in trying to interpret the prophecy. So anyway, in going to the Old Testament, we come upon a few things. First of all, the one that is simplest of all, in my opinion, it's easiest of all because the Bible tells you straight. Is the name of the beast. I don't know if we need to go any further than what it says. It says about this beast in Revelation 1, upon his heads, the name of blasphemy. The beast has written on him the name of blasphemy. If you go to Revelation 17, it says the same thing. It says, in verse 3, I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy. All right, so if you were to ask me, what is the name of the beast? I would say that the Bible tells you that his name is full of names of blasphemy. It's logical to conclude that the name of this beast is, in a word, blasphemy, right? And then you ask, what is blasphemy? And if you go to the Old Testament, you find that blasphemy is an attitude of defiance of God, where you don't respect God, you hold God in contempt, and you say, God cannot stop my purposes. And of course, brothers and sisters, if you have eyes open at all, you can see that this is that is taking over the world, and it predominates Europe and America. And in what we have been sharing, you right now, what is happening in the world is frightening. And I'm not talking about the Black Lives Matter movement. I'm not talking about this. I'm talking about, well, most of you know, I am black, okay? I don't like color prejudice, and I don't like black people to be abused and misused. And so when people say Black Lives Matter, I sympathize. I empathize with that because Black lives do matter, and I don't like to see injustice. But at the same time, I've come to learn that there's a movement called Black Lives Matter, and I was kind of startled when I looked at the website, and what I saw is that this movement is really an LGBT movement. It's a movement it's disguised under the name Black Lives Matter, but the purpose of it is that everybody in the world must come under the umbrella of this LGBT, transgender, this blatantly barefaced immoral movement. And I was startled, and I realized that Satan is working in ways that we don't understand to create his purposes in this world. So the name blasphemy, I see it stamped upon these systems, these entities that have set themselves to defy the God of heaven. Can you say anybody respects God, is determined to promote on this world things that God has declared? God doesn't even need to say. God makes it very clear that this displeases him, and you are compelling everybody to legitimize and accept it. Anyway, that's just one example of the kind of blasphemy that I see being manifested. The system of atheism, the mindset of atheism, and the evolutionary mindset that exists in the world today has resulted in governments and people that are barefaced in their defiance of God. And yet what I see happening is that this is one of the conditions that will ensure that you are safe when the mark of the beast comes. Because if you have the name of the beast, which is the same blasphemous attitude of the beast, then you are not in any trouble. That's what the prophecy seems to be saying. Okay? To understand this, you understand, brothers and sisters, that the mark of the beast will be ultimately a movement to destroy God's people. It will be a movement to destroy true Christianity. When the beast comes back from the bottomless pit, he makes war against witnesses. It is war against true Christianity. So, of course, if you're a blasphemer, if you defy God and you have no respect for God, and you speak the same language as these people, you're already safe. So that's what I understand from this name of the beast. Now, the number of the beast is a little bit more complicated, but it's not really that difficult. The numbers in the Bible, you can look at them two ways. You can look at these numbers as being literal. I mean, in the prophecies, you can look at them as literal numbers, or you can look at them as symbolic. And if you have symbolic numbers, usually when you have a symbolic number, it carries a spiritual or a character implication. What do I mean? When you look at the number 7, what comes to your mind? The number 7 is used in the Bible over and over. And it's clear that there is a spiritual, a character, a symbolic representation. In Revelation chapter 5, Jesus is shown as a lamb having 7 heads, 7 eyes, I'm sorry. He's shown as a lamb having 7 eyes and 7 horns. And Jesus does not, by a stretch of the imagination, have 7 horns. It is clear that the 7 horns represent the completeness of the power of Jesus. 7 is a symbol that represents the characteristics of the power that Jesus possessed. And it's used like that many places in the Bible. God uses the number 7, 7 days in the week, 7,000 years in the history of the human race. And 7 seals, 7 trumpets, 7 churches. He divides things into 7s because he wants to make a point. And the point is, he's talking about completion or perfect. The number 12 and the number 144. 12, 12 is 144. The number 12 is a number that is associated with the kingdom of God. And so the holy city is 144,000 cubits wide, long. It's almost like a cube with 144,000 cubits on every side. So what I'm saying is, it seems to me that it is reasonable to approach the number by looking at the meaning of the number rather than by looking at the numerical value of the number. The numerical value, you are looking for 666 things. In this case, you are looking for a name that has 666. Sorry, that's my fun. 666 numerical units. But I'm talking about something else. And there's one passage in the book of Daniel that particularly gave me a reason to really lean in this direction. I was reading in the story of Belshazzar's kingdom when it was taken over that night. And just a statement that God makes. And this is important because it is God who makes a statement. You remember Belshazzar had was having a feast, and then the hand appeared on the wall, writing on the wall, and it said, "Mene, mene, tekel, upharsin." Nobody could interpret it until Daniel was called, and when Daniel came, Daniel interpreted the dream. But it's the interpretation that Daniel says. He says in verse 26, this is the interpretation of the thing. The first point he makes, "Mene, God has numbered your kingdom and finished it." That's what Daniel says. God has numbered your kingdom. What does this mean? God has numbered your kingdom. I don't know if this phrase appears anywhere else in the Bible. I haven't really looked for it, but I don't know if anybody can remember if this word ever appears anywhere else. But what does it mean when he says God has numbered your kingdom? We today use a similar phrase. If I say to somebody, "I have your number, buddy." If somebody says, "Give me your number," you know it means give me your phone number, right? But if somebody say, "Mark, I have your number, I have your number," what do we mean?
You judge them, you size them up.
Exactly. Thank you, Sister Diane. It means that I've assessed you, I've sized you up. I've formed an opinion about you, and I'm not fooled about you. I know exactly what you're about. That's what you're saying if you say I have your number. And if you look at if you look at what this means, look at what happened in Babylon that night. This is precisely what God was saying, because Babylon had continued for a few hundred years, a couple of hundred years, or nearly 200 years, and Belshazzar blasphemed God that night because he took the vessels from the house of God and he drank from them, he and his lords, and he praised the gods of wood and stone and gold and metal, although he knew how God had worked in the life of his grandfather Nebuchadnezzar. And so God comes to him and God says, I have numbered your kingdom. What it means is, I have evaluated your kingdom. I've looked at your kingdom, I've looked at how you have operated, and I've measured and I've analyzed you, and I've put a value to your kingdom, and your kingdom is finished. It's like you have a child in your class as a teacher, and every year he's making 10%, and that's his number. And after a while, you say, you can't come back here. You have to find another school. And that's what he was like saying to Belshazzar. Your kingdom has been numbered. I've weighed you in the balances. That's what he says in the next verse. Thou art weighed in the balances and found wanting. Balances are like scales. I've put you in the scales, and I have evaluated you, and your number is far too low, and your kingdom is divided. Your kingdom is over. That's what it means. And remember that this is in the prophetic book of Daniel. So I see justification here for going to the book of Revelation and adopting the same principle. And that is why I don't believe the 144,000 is a literal number. I believe it's a number that is to be looked at in the same way. I believe it is a number that states a spiritual evaluation. 12 is God's kingdom number. 12, 12, 144. The perfection of the kingdom is the 144,000. And that's why it is given the spiritual value 144,000. That's what I believe, right? You don't have to agree, but that's what I believe based on what I just explained. And so also I see that when you come to the beast, his number is 666. You are looking for an evaluation of the principles of the beast kingdom. And with this in mind, I've gone to the Old Testament and I look for the number 603 score and 6, 666, because if you can find it in the Bible, it's worth thinking about, because the only place it appears is in the New Testament is in Revelation. But when you look at the Old Testament, you find, and it's interesting because when I look at my Bible, it doesn't even give me a cross reference. Look here. Give me two references in Revelation. It doesn't give me a cross reference to what I'm looking for. I have to just search for it. It's somewhere in the Old Testament where it says that I think it's First Kings 8. First Kings 8, I believe, if I'm right. I could be wrong. And it talks about no, I think I'm wrong. I think I'm wrong. Let me look for it, because I want Brother Warren to see every bit of evidence that supports what I'm saying. 603 score. It's First Kings 10, right? It's First Kings 10 and verse 14. It says, now the weight of gold that came to Solomon in 1 year was 603 score and 6 talents of gold. So there doesn't seem to be much in this statement at first, because it just tells you how much gold Solomon obtained. But when you consider certain other things, when you consider that Solomon's kingdom, even till today, it is considered one of the greatest kingdoms, one of the richest, one of the most luxurious kingdoms that ever existed in the history of the world. You know, while Rome is characterized by iron, and you have some kingdoms that are noted for military and political strength, Solomon's kingdom was noted for the magnificence of the temple that he built. The Bible says that in his days, let me just mute everybody. It says that in the days of Solomon, he made gold to be like the stones in the street. So his kingdom was characterized by riches beyond measure. There was a certain set of gold mines that they call King Solomon's mines. I forget how much gold came out of it each year. He had ships that just brought gold over. And so what I see here, it's 603 score and six. And when God uses this number in Revelation, he knows what he's doing. He's saying to us, take this number and go back and look for where it first appears. Because he's trying to say that the beast system that is coming is going to be focused on the finances of your financial situation. In other words, it's going to be something focused on finances. There's going to be an emphasis on the glorification of money and worldly goods. So that if you're a part of that financial structure, and if you conform to that financial system, then it is likely that you won't be affected by the mark. God's people at this time will not be able to exist in this financial system because, first of all, you don't have the mark, so you can't buy or sell. It doesn't matter if you're a millionaire, all of that you will be unable to access it. They're just going to turn off your credit card or whatever it is. But the people who maintain their connection with that system, and the system itself, as most of us know, what is going on in the world today is being manipulated by the rich people who own the banks and they own the nations. They are the ones who are manipulating the system and who are trying to bring about a condition that everybody in this world becomes slaves to the rich in this world. It's a system of sophisticated slavery that they are building. And of course, so I believe that this number here in Revelation is showing us that it's the number of a man. It's the number of a man because man's value is 6. Man's value is 6 because man was created on the 6th day. Man's value is 6 because 6 is less than 7. And man can never attain to 7 because 7 is the number of completeness. Man is higher than the animals. The highest place he can get is 6. So when you give me a triple 6, you give me the perfect epitome, the perfect embodiment of all that humanity can achieve and that they can accomplish. And the highest that man can accomplish without God in man's system, where's the highest place he can go? The highest place is to become rich. And even is to obtain worldly goods, is to be rich in a worldly way. Even when you listen to people, you listen to the movie stars, the rock stars, and even the common man on the street. All they talk about is the glory of money, right? And they value you by how much money you have. And it's the
Brother
mood.
David,
I see you, Brother Arthur. It's the mood and the intent and the glory of the world, and it's the highest that you can get without God. And so it is the number of man. Go ahead.
can I make a confession? I've
Sure.
I grew up in the Adventist church, and I've long studied the the book of Revelation. And let me say this: of all that I've ever heard, on the book, the study of Revelation, I've never ever found somebody who've hit at it in with the weight that you have done with respect to Revelation. I see much more weight. I see much more meat. I see far more than I've seen previously or subsequently. I gather a lot of what you've said. I look at them seriously for myself, and I see where they make far greater sense. In fact, I think Seventh-day Adventists over the years have applied too much physical and literal. Let me see. They make too much of Revelation literal, and as a result of that, a lot of the stuff have been missed, and they basically operate on too much a simplistic level. What you have done looking at it over the years, I have really seen a whole heap of sense and a whole heap of spiritual meat that only when you sit and meditate and go through it with the Spirit of Yahweh, you will find that.
Thank you, Brother Arthur. I appreciate the endorsement. To God be the glory. Sister
Brother
Diane.
David. Yeah, it made me think about the three temptations of Christ. That last one, was the materialism, the kingdoms, and wealth. That
Hmm.
was the third one for him, kingdoms and wealth.
You planted an idea in my mind. I'm going to go and take a closer look.
Hmm.
That's an interesting thought. I'm going to take a closer look. And then, of course, the last point, and I'm going to stop here now. The last point is the mark itself. And we spent some time looking at that. And the truth is that I'm not going to put my finger on something when it comes to the mark, because I really believe that everything is pointing in the direction of the homosexual movement. And when I say this, I emphasize over and over. People ask me, how can you say that homosexuality is a mark of the beast? And I don't say this because homosexuality is a practice of people. Some people say it's a state of being. I'm referring to it as a practice. And some people are born, not are born, but they develop early into this kind of lifestyle. But what I'm saying is that when I look at the prophecy, it points me to Sodom. It points me to this practice. In Romans 1, it is pointed out as the mark of a society that has rejected God. So I believe that the mark of the beast will, whether they are going to require you to have some form of identification that is associated with acceptance of this. I don't know, because the details of it, I don't think any of us know the details of how things are going to play out, but I think the Bible shows us that it's going to be in this direction. So to be specific, to say exactly you're going to have a tattoo on your hand, you're going to have an ID with a number, to say exactly you're going to be required to sign a paper before you can get a job, I don't know. I mean, I'd be presumptuous to try to make a statement like this, but I am pretty certain when I look at the prophecy, when I look at the prophecies, I'm pretty certain that the mark of the beast crisis is going to revolve around the issue of the gay lifestyle, homosexual marriage, something to do with it. All right.
Can I make a
And
quick point?
sure.
You remember how when we were in Australia and another country that some ladies told us that they were going to be, some nurses were going to be reevaluated, and this question as to how they will deal with homosexuals and so on. Their view, their belief in relation to this will be taken into account. Also, a friend of mine told me about here in Jamaica that there's some folks that were supposed to be given given the status of justice of the peace, what the Americans would call a notary public, and and three of them went through, one didn't, and he asked why, and he said that they were asked whether or not they would be willing to marry homosexuals or lesbians, and he refused, and on that basis they refused him the status. So can you not see then it is possible that our belief in the system, whether it would be bank account, whether it would be whatever we need for survival here, will be tested based on our acceptance or rejection of this practice? I mean, especially if it becomes a human right.
Yes.
David, sorry.
Sister
David?
Diana, you win.
Oh, I'm in foster care, and one of in our other counties, a foster social worker lost her license at this. Well, she lost her job because she wouldn't place a child in a same-sex family. Because she wouldn't place a child in a same-sex, she lost her job.
My dear Lord.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Wayne.
Right. I hope you can see my screen, but would you be able to see that?
Oh, yeah, we can see it. We can see it. Hold it up a little.
All right. Huh? It's what it
Yeah,
says.
we can see it.
Let's paint the world. Right. So this is one of the supermarkets here. It's the first time they've published this, right? And everywhere you go now, this is what you're seeing posted on the buses all over the place. That I know this much to say, let's paint the world with the rainbow color. even with the COVID-19, it was linked to the movement from the beginning to the end, right? Everywhere you turn in the schools, it's posted on the corridors, a special day for those of such lifestyle. It's flooding every corner. Young people have had discussion with young people about this matter, and not fully openly, just casual, just little talk, and they take real offense to it and took it to the head of the institution, right? It's something for you not to in any way just hint something negative about it. And it's a great offense just to say a slight word that you are in objection in any way.
Yeah, and it's
I
people who have,
honestly believe that there's something definitely linked to this movement.
and the Black Lives Matter movement. I can understand why they have hijacked the movement, because being black is something that God has given us. We didn't ask for our skin color. So when you discriminate against me because of the color of my skin, legitimately, it should be a human rights offense. Okay, and so the fight for that kind of human right has been now tied to the gay movement. They have now hijacked that movement so that now, once they're already declaring that it's a human right, and therefore once it's a human right, you cannot object to it, and it's easily conceivable that in the future the thing becomes blown up to such a place. Like Rain says, the slogan says, let's paint the world in a rainbow. Let's turn the whole world into a Sodom. That is the goal. And it's conceivable that if they get this, if they achieve their agenda, which I don't see how it's going to be stopped. If they achieve this agenda, it will be a simple matter that if you want a bank account, it's a part of the criteria, because now you have to give all kind of information to get a bank account. If you want to travel, if you want to get a visa, if you want to get a job, it's conceivable. It's easily conceivable, and I believe that that is what the Bible points. It points us in that direction. So that's the way I would answer those three questions, Brother Warren.
Thank you. That's excellent. Thanks. I appreciate that. And just in confirmation of that, in my hometown, the council actually, on one of the roads, in favour of the gay movement, put a huge rainbow right on the road. There's this, they're painted on the road, right across the road, and it's just tell them that they're fully in favour of this gay rights movement. So yeah, I agree with what you're saying, and thank you for that explanation, David. Sadly, I have to leave now. I have to leave now.
I know.
So,
I know.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I'll see you next week.
All right. Look forward to it, Sister Diane.
Okay.
Listen, it saddens me that they have used this. Well, they're not even using it. It was created this way. We just got duped. You see, the whole initial creation of the Black Lives Matter had nothing to do with us. So we got duped in this thing. And if they had said African lives or something other than the color, which is not making really reference to us, you see, because that doesn't even make sense to say that, because for them to use this, when I realized that the civil rights movement was a joke, because that's something that can be given to someone and taken away as if your property still, that civil rights. And what they should have been something they should have declared was human rights, inalienable rights, because that's something God given and nobody can give you or take away. But to put it under civil rights, we already got duped again, because that's not what we were wanting. That's not something that's legitimate. So for these people to come up and they're backed by that George Soros, So he had an agenda to even start it in the first place. And so we jumped on board thinking it was about us. I found this out several years ago that these three lesbians were the ones who started it, which made me look into it, you see. So I'm thinking, wow, three lesbians? Why is this? Yeah, see, so it's about trans, so they use their thing. It's trans Black lives. It's trans, anything that has to do with the LGBTQ, HIJ, that alphabet soup. Then if it's Black, then they're going to put it, that's what I call it. And they're going to put it under that. And I feel so bad because they're plastering it all over the cities. They did it on 16th Street in Washington, D.C. They've done it in Charlotte now, in North Carolina, where I have big, colorful signs on this one street. So it's going to happen all over the United States. And the sad thing is, people that are going to be mad, racially going to be mad, are going to think it's about us. And the African people who are going to jump on board to support the movement or give money, they're going to think it's about us. And it's not. So everybody's being duped. The ones who are against it, the ones who are part of it, the ones who will financially support it, don't understand. We're all being duped in this situation. And
All
it's
right.
sad.
So anyway, I think we're going to officially close the meeting because we have been at it a long time. But I want to thank you all for your participation. Thanks to Brother Peter for sharing his thoughts. And those of you who have to go, we look forward to seeing you again. Wednesday night, we have prayer meeting for those who can join at 7. Thursday evening at 3 o'clock is a webinar on YouTube. Friday night at 7, we just have our get-together fellowship. And that's when I hope to see you all again. And then next Sabbath, of course. So let's just bow our heads as we give thanks.